Good morning, Wrestling Inc. Get up, get going. Happy Thursday. I hope you are thirsty for some pro wrestling punditry. It is me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Thursday to quench that thirst for pro wrestling punditry. It's our good friend, Paul Pratt. Paul, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Great to be back with you, Nick.
Yeah, we're back. We're here. We're in the house. Sorry we're late. Technical difficulties this morning. We got through them. We're going to do a great show here today. Dave in, loading Hausman and Paul, right? Sliceberg Slim. Happy Thirsty Thursday, Nick and Paul. Appreciate that. Great name, by the way, Sliceberg Slim.
Sliceberg Slim, I love it.
That's good, right? Sounds like somebody that plays pool, right? A billiards.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got a lot of news to get to here for the past 24 hours. We had Dynamite last night. We had WOW news happen that we're going to talk about. After the news block, we're going to dive into today's conversation. Today, I'm chatting with Alicia Atout. She is, of course, with MLW. Tonight, MLW Fightland is going to be airing after Dark Side of the Ring.
Yep.
There's going to be this news program, like a halftime show during Fightland, where Alicia is going to talk with some notable names from the pro wrestling journalism space. And I don't know if I'm talking out of school, but yeah, Raj is going to be on the show tonight.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm supposed to openly say that or not, but whatever. You know, we kind of talk openly about it in the interview, I think, here with Alicia. So YOLO, whatever. Yeah, very excited. It's going to be great to be a part of it tonight, Paul.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Raj. Well deserved.
Yes, absolutely. And after we talk to Alicia, after we talk the news, we will dive into the mailbag. We're going to look at Jeff Hardy teasing Willow and the Wisp possibly coming to WWE TV. We're going to talk about that in the mailbag, but let's get to it here. News you can use, news that will leave a bruise. Let's start with Dynamite last night. We'll go right to the main event. The casino ladder match. The Joker was Hangman Adam Page. Big victory. Adam Page now right in that AEW World Title picture. Has the big casino chip. What'd you think of how the show came to a close last night, Paul?
Well, as I tweeted after watching it, I watched it quite late on delay, but I feel it was perfectly played for Adam Page to step away, be a dad, right? And get that opportunity to be with his family while AEW packed the roster with these big name acquisitions, which would have unquestionably overshadowed him no matter what they were planning for him. And now he's returned in a way that makes sense. It's exciting and puts him right back. It reheats that storyline that we've been looking forward to for a full year between him and Omega. And it gives him that opportunity finally.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Real well. The crowd way into Adam Page. And
absolutely.
My thought was exactly the same. Like, in the time that Adam Page has been gone, like, so much has seemingly happened in AEW. And to put him right back as a top player creates just a whole lot of new fun matchups and opportunities that just weren't there, obviously when he wasn't in the picture. So, yeah. Anyway.
I also just think that it's fantastic that they gave him that space, which I think sometimes when it's well done, that's, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And we had, certainly he had built up the steam that he would have needed to challenge Kenny Omega for the AEW World Title regardless. But he went away. Other people came in as opposed to stepping on whatever momentum he had. And this was a great way to, strap that rocket right back to him and put him back where he was in a way that really makes sense as well. And so it was well done.
Yeah, and I'm interested, too, that, with Daniel Bryan and Omega going to that stalemate, on Dynamite, or was it Dynamite? Yeah, it was Dynamite.
It was Dynamite 2 weeks ago.
Sorry, big matches happening all the time over on Rampage, too, these days. But, yeah, after that stalemate, I thought it was going to be a foregone conclusion that Daniel Bryan, Omega would main event full gear here next month. I wonder if we see a triple threat, if they wait for Page to cash in after that bout. I don't know if they would do it before. Like, when do you think this is going to go down where he gets the title shot?
I think that they may want to, put that big match together for Omega versus Bryan at the next pay-per-view. That's something that people, I think, certainly would pay pay money for. They'd pay to see it. We just saw a half hour of it, and imagine if it went to a 1 hour. Like those are two guys that could do it, and they could keep it entertaining. But obviously, I think that in terms of the homegrown storylines, people have wanted to see Omega and Paige easily for a year now. That's what we've been building towards. And prior to the realization of all these big name acquisitions and people jumping from one party to the next, that was the story that we were building this entire company around. So, now that maybe they do milk that for a little bit longer. I don't think there's anything that necessarily requires, Paige to cash in his casino chip immediately.
Yeah.
But I do think that it would leave like a lingering feeling over the heads of most viewers that, there's no way that Kenny's going to drop this belt to anyone, because that match with Paige is where we're going.
Yeah. I'm just interested to see how Brian plays into this. Did he get it out of his, I wrestled Omega. He goes off, he does other things. Maybe he's a contender down the road for whoever wins Paige versus Omega. But bottom line, there's like the thing that always strikes me when I watch AEW, Paul, is that like I care, right? Like these characters have been presented to me even through losses. Like a lot of times you see strength on the other side. Jungle Boy is a great example of that. Like I care. I get excited. I think about like, how does this all affect each other? It's a different kind of vibe. It's a different kind of energy I get at AEW.
And that is correct. One of the things that I think that I don't know. I'm sure that WWE specifically tries to present it as such, but there is none of that sense with most of the people who get real close to a big victory only to fall short. I don't know how to explain it, but it never feels like it's like, well, that's typical, like they're not, where with AEW it does have that feel like they're building towards the capacity and capability for these individuals to get that next big victory, to move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like, I guess call out what we're referring to here. Yeah, over at WWE, if you lose like in a big position, like a lot of times you just go like all of a sudden you're chasing a 24/7 title picture around, right? Like there's just not there's not a lot of faith if you see somebody you love start to lose at WWE. I think the only one who really is kind of the exception to that rule is Sami Zayn, just because I think Sami Zayn has created a character that is just Teflon, right? That guy could lose all day and he remains a threat, Yes.
I mean, I certainly think that part of it is too that there is, there's no perception, and whether it's a gimmick or not a gimmick, the idea that wins and losses matter, and they do give people, and they reference these victories and things of that nature. So it does give people a sense that, it feels like the same, kind of like real life, like it's like, okay, I moved 3 steps ahead in my life, and now I moved, 2 back, but I'm still making progress type of thing. Versus WWE, it feels like people are just hot-shotted into opportunities or to reheat them in 6 weeks, and then when the next pay-per-view is done, they're right back to wherever they were or worse sometimes.
Yeah, and I think about MJF, a lot of wins, but then you lost to Jericho, and you kind of wonder, was that the payoff? Right back into it here with Darby, picked up that victory over Brian Pillman Jr., who, I think Pillman Jr. will have another chance to shine, kind of like we're talking about with a lot of talent. I see Chaz Shaw here saying Dante Martin, great example of that. A guy who's in a really great tag team, not prominent, but when he came out and you're sitting there and you've got him and Malachi Black in the ring, obviously, Black's the bigger shark, but I'm interested to see what the next chapter of that looks like, because Dante Martin has been presented as a top tier talent to me.
Yeah, I think that for certain that none of us are probably presuming that Dante Martin is going to walk out of this victorious.
Yeah.
But he's a very young star, and they are developing interest in him extremely early. They're telling his story in a way that is credible and realistic, where he picks up the victory here and there, but he's inching forward. And then at some point, the perception of the audience is that flip, the switch is going to flip, and then he's going to start picking up more victories than losses, and eventually it's going to get to that place where he becomes credible. I want to remind audiences that many months ago when you and I started this, I gave Sting as an example of that when they brought him into WCW NWA. He came into this, he was not very experienced. He'd only been wrestling a couple years by that point in time.
Yeah.
And they brought him in and he did extremely well in losses or time limit draws to major stars, but it began to build his credibility so that people wanted to pull for him.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, similarly enough, JJ Smith here saying, as we saw in the lead up to Darby winning the TNT title, he also lost a bunch, right? We're kind of seeing this, I think, with Fuego del Sol right now. I think he's in the middle of a cycle like that, losing the big title match to Miro. Really nice as Sammy Guevara, by the way, to just give him another.
I'm a truck.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a nice truck, too. That was like a $40K truck that he gave that guy. So, anyway, I think we're obviously seeing a little bit of that with Fuego right now. And that's not a terrible way to bring people in. Even last night with Bobby Fish, right? And, we talk about wins and losses matter. I had to chuckle as, of course, Bobby's never had a match in AEW, and here he is in this title shot. But I guess Sammy did an open challenge, so.
Right. Well, and they also referenced multiple times during that match how this is the return of the open challenge. They didn't say Cody's name, but Cody did the open challenge. People came from the indies all over. And that was, at the time, that was the most exciting part for people who say that I hate Cody. Like, that was the most exciting part of this program for 6 weeks or so.
Oh, sure.
Every week they brought in another indie talent for us to get to see who was going to challenge. And the possibility existed because especially then we felt like, well, it's very possible that AEW would bring one of these big indie stars in, put them over immediately, and turn them into like a homegrown talent.
I wonder, who are the big indie stars left for Sammy? Like Effie, Alley Cat. I feel like most of them at this point have been signed up by AEW or WWE in the past 18 months,
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are definitely moving into that spot, but, I think that most people have been at least given a tryout by AEW at this point.
Yeah, and I did gloss over real quickly, but yeah, Bobby Fish decidedly in the mix. AEW announced he's officially signed with the company. A lot of people now saying Kyle O'Reilly, he's certainly got an opportunity over at AEW when his WWE contract comes up. Would really be something if Tony Khan is able to present the Undisputed Era in his own company within the year.
I think that would be phenomenal. And, like a reunion of the Undisputed Era would be something I would certainly want to tune in for.
I think the only member left out here would be Roderick Strong, who seems like really cemented over in NXT right now with the Diamond Mine. Like, he's one of the few NXT, I guess, 1.0ers that they've actually kept around and seem to be investing in at the moment.
Yes. And, I do not, at the same time, the oddest part of that to me is that he's like the leader of this faction that he doesn't seem to fit into at all.
He does look so out of place with this.
Utterly out of place.
Right. And so, I don't know what his contract. I mean, I say they're positioning him in the role of this, but he does not look like the leader of this group. Bivens looks like the leader of this group. He's got these huge Creed brothers behind him, right? What's the Ivy Steele? Is that her name?
Ivy Steele.
Damn, that girl is a firecracker. That's her and Cora Jade are wonderful looks into the future of WWE's women's division. But Roddy, with the haircut, looks way out of place. I agree, man. It's very odd. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least he gets to lead a faction, whether or not he looks like he should be part of it or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Go work with Tony D'Angelo. People seem to like him. Maybe you can be the cleaner for him. Just throwing it out there. Anyway, we had MCASP here pointing out, by the way, with the open challenge Cody did. Kingston and Starks, they both wound up getting contracts.
Yep.
Right. And let's see here. There was something else I thought I wanted to bring up. Oh, well, I guess you guys are commenting too fast. I'll try to keep up. Sorry, guys. So the other big news coming out of AEW last night, they introduced this TBS championship for women. And I believe a tournament is going to be held to crown the first champion. Thoughts on the new title, how it was presented, everything involved in the title.
I tweeted my thoughts on this last night. I'm very excited that there's going to be another women's championship in AEW. I'd be even more excited if they focused on the women's title that they already have. I don't understand the concept to go from one of the least compelling women's divisions in professional wrestling to the idea of, well, we'll just add another title. The problem that has traditionally been faced by anybody who's in the position of the AEW Women's Champion is that there's only ever one seemingly credible contender at any given time. It's exactly what we were talking about with the problems with WWE, where somebody gets, hot shotted and then they get their opportunity and then they're never heard from again.
Correct.
They drop to the bottom. That's exactly how AEW has presented their women's division, with the exception of Britt Baker, who was always relevant to the point that many people thought that she may not become the AEW Women's Champion because she was one of the few people they had established separate from the title. And the other women were actually using the title as a crutch to make them relevant. I don't know what the thought process behind this is. I mean, give the women some more TV time, give them some better stories, give them a little more focus. I don't think they needed a second championship. I'm happy that they have one. I think certainly that more title opportunities is great. And this is the first time we've seen a major company do a secondary women's title, right? This is but at the same time, make some people credible so that they don't necessarily need a title to be relevant.
Yeah, I hearken a lot. I mean, I think the thing for me that I echo the loudest there is the TV time for them to tell those stories. Because I think a lot of times the reasons that, with the men, you're able to, tell those stories a little bit easier is because, they're getting more time to do matches. They're presented in a more prompt. You're following the characters more thoroughly week to week. We just don't see that continued vein. It's very interesting that you compare WWE's booking of really just kind of
everyone.
Yeah, and not but to the specifically AEW's women's division, when it's obvious their men's division has a different kind of resonance to it. So.
Well, I mean, again, they have that track record of treating the women exactly like what we just talked about. How many times, during Hikaru Shida's reign, which was the longest, and that's the reason I'm going to that. It's also the least memorable, in my opinion, of the women's division. But they would, so-and-so is coming up in the top 5 or whatever. So then you get to see that person for 3 weeks as they get heated up to that top spot. They get defeated, and then, well, there they go. Oh, look who's coming up the top 5 again. That's the way they've treated the women.
I was very surprised that they didn't put the title on Ruby, just to kind of have another big name established woman on their roster that maybe their other big name established woman on the roster could work with for a prolonged period of time. Because where's Ruby? What's she doing 6-man tags on Dynamite and Rampage, or on Rampage right now? I don't know, man. Very surprised by that one. Seemed like a real opportunity there to elevate at least one other member of their women's division at the moment.
I don't dislike the fact that Ruby didn't win the belt. I mean, she looked very strong in that. What I would be more interested in is if they, set this out to be a story where she's got this path to redemption, where she has to sort of cut through the women's division to kind of, get back to that opportunity, because that's a logical way to play out the story that they like to play. Meanwhile, there should be other people who are stepping in who are also on that same path. You could legitimately forget that half the women on the roster are on the roster.
Yeah. Issa here, New York City Demon Diva.
I love Issa.
Welcome to the program, Issa. She's saying, I agree. They still have a lot of work to do with their women's division. And yeah, it'll be interesting. Having 2 women's belts kind of guarantees, you would think, at least 2 women's matches regularly of prominence. But I'm with you, man.
But will it? Because that one of them is presumably going to be on TBS and one is going to be on TNT.
Yeah. So Mike M.
They've got a brand split in their non-existent women's division.
Mike M. here. Ruby Soho versus Jade for that new TBS title should be interesting. Yeah, Ruby.
Agreed.
Yeah, Thunder Rosa saying, or Rob Humphrey here saying Thunder Rosa, she's the one to take the belt off of Britt. We've already kind of seen it. I don't know, like, who is the first TBS champion? I see a lot of people writing in for Jade Cargill, as the woman to hold that TBS title. I just hope that there's another woman that gets elevated to Britt's level, because, like, you need to have more player. Like, the reason the men's division is so compelling because you have so many people that are believable. Even in losses, you believe they could come back and win and get some kind of meaningful push. Yeah, like we've said, I think a million times here at this point, just not the case, unfortunately, with AEW's women's division.
It is not.
Yeah. All right. Well, a couple other items coming out of AEW Dynamite last night. This one, first of all, before I get to all the off-screen stuff, anything else from the program you wanted to bring up before we wrap up kind of some Dynamite talk?
The only thing that comes to mind is I was moderately intrigued by the promo between Arn and Cody. Like, no, you gave us up, or whatever he said. I had to say that I chuckled for a hot second when Cody was like, "What are you going to do? Shoot me?"
I actually thought that's the most Cody's ever made me laugh is when he walked out of the balcony. He's like, "What are you doing?" And Arn's like, "I got a fire going down here." Snuck onto your property. I laughed. I thought that was really enjoyable too. A lot of people by the way, they thought the opening 8-man tag match was like sloppy, dangerous, poorly officiated. I mean, I think a lot of that is maybe accurate, but it was a real fun train wreck kind of spot to watch, I thought.
I'm going to be very transparent here. When there's more than about 4 people in a match, my mind zones out because if I pay too close of attention, legitimately things like lack of officiating, things that my mind starts to become too logical, and there is no logic to those things, and so I have to sort of just zone out, and I honestly try not to watch. I just try to listen because they do a great job of telling the story. But if I start to actually pay attention, I get really contentious.
Fair enough. Well, off screen after the show during the dark tapings, ECW original Blue Meanie, former WCW star Crowbar, made surprising appearances during the AEW dark tapings. Crowbar, accompanied by Meanie, wrestled Joey Janela. Meanwhile, also in ECW news, because they were in Philly, Jerry Lynn, Taz, Malenko, and Jericho addressed the Philly crowd after the tapings at Rampage. Tony Khan also joined them in the ring. So a lot of ECW love being given off air from Dynamite last night to the Philly fans, which I'm sure was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have nothing to say that will not get me spit roasted. I appreciate the fact that there is a significant love for ECW, but for a company that 95% of the world never got to see outside of it being, a WWE product, it's definitely revered in a way that if you truly loved most of the stars of that company, you would put aside for a while because it stunted the growth of a lot of people. That's all they hear. You know what I mean? I feel that so many of the talented competitors in ECW have been turned into the equivalent of a flock of seagulls who have 50 records, but, tour the world performing Iran, their one hit that everybody knew.
Wow.
And that's all that people think of them as.
The flock of seagulls. What a comparison, I should say, to ECW. I get what it doesn't bug me as much. I was not an ECW kid. I respect what ECW did. I get why there are very loyal fans. They were in Philly. It's not like they did this in Tulsa, right?
Right. I mean, it makes sense in this case, but legitimately, I mean, have we been able to do any interview that with somebody that's doing something different or new where they either they or fans don't be like, you're like ECW, it's like, come on, it's, I know, again, I'm going to get fire roasted for this.
Yeah.
But I think that it's just, I feel like it stunts people's growth to like only rely on that.
Yeah, we got a bad Keith Gaming here. Paul, okay, you have been canceled. LOL, no ECW hate here. But Rob Humphrey saying, I love how Paul speaks the truth no matter what. So very, very divisive opinion, I guess you have here, Paul. People on both sides.
I mean, if you can get past the fact that you perceive saying that we shouldn't, what I'm saying here, like using that musical comparison, if you like the song I Ran, does that make you a Flock of Seagulls fan? Or are you a Flock of Seagulls fan if you actually know something besides their one hit? Like allow people to have some growth. Like Robin S. sings Show Me Love for the next 50 years. Wow. Let them have some growth. Otherwise, it's pretty stunting.
Just going. I feel like you're attacking 80s pop stars and acts at this point. I feel like
I'm absolutely not. I'm actually advocating for them because what I'm saying is maybe explore an entire album instead of one song.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, lastly here, from Dynamite, before we get into some other news, CM Punk cut his latest promo talking about how much he loves the fans. He's back for them, and he's going to take on Daniel Garcia this Friday on Rampage. Why did he roll through Hobbs to not go on to Starks is what I want to know. Like, I don't understand what? Like, I thought Daniel Garcia was supposed to wrestle Daniel or Bryan Danielson first. I'm not hating on the fact that Punk Garcia is happening, I guess, inherently, but I'm a little surprised Punk didn't use the Hobbs match to set up the match with Ricky Starks, who's a little higher up on Team FTW's list.
Well, I don't understand anything necessarily that's happening with Daniel Garcia, but he's a super talented kid. And, for somebody who has borderline never won a match that I've ever seen on AEW programming, he's getting some of the highest profile stars. He's getting some of the highest profile spots. So good on him.
Yeah, I think he's very much in that kind of Dean Malenko class where it's just like such a proficient technical performer in a very convincing way. I know there was a lot of people in the chat room. You had a very divisive opinion just a moment ago. I'm going to say something right now that I think may offend a couple of the people in the chat room. Daniel Garcia works really well because he's a proficient technical performer that can make every one of those holds look meaningful and effective. I watched Tony D'Angelo on Tuesday night. Everyone wants to support Tony D'Angelo. I get it. That guy's got to tighten up his headlocks. That man, there was an inch of air as he was trying to hold people on the ground. I was just like, it's not how I would do it. Just saying. That's the reason Daniel Garcia gets the chances he does.
I am going to go on an even more divisive comment here.
Oh boy.
I cannot stand the fact that Daniel Garcia wrestles in knee-high socks that come over his boots. Come on, kid. Work those calves so you don't have to hide them with a pair of pantyhose.
Okay, fair enough. He's lanky, right?
Yeah, he's very slender. Like I haven't spent a significant amount of time with him, but I've been around him in a couple of environments. Very, very slender, like there's just not an ounce of fat anywhere on it. You know what I mean? It's just like sinew.
Yeah. Well, I don't dislike Daniel Garcia. I'm actually.
No, I like him. The socks drive me crazy. Like it reminds me. This is totally unrelated, but it reminds me of the wrestler Thunder Kitty, because part of her gimmick is she's this 100-year-old woman's wrestler, and so she wears like knee socks. And I'm just like, it's not a very modern look. But maybe Daniel Garcia is not a very modern type of character.
Fair enough. As we're talking about Punk, we have a little bit more AEW news that we'll get to here in just a second, but I want to address what Punk's significant other is doing in the world of professional wrestling. Wow. Women of Wrestling is returning, featuring former WWE Divas champion AJ Mendez, a.k.a. AJ Lee, on commentary. WoW World Champion The Beast, former champion Tessa Blanchard are going to lead the roster. Viacom CBS Global Distribution Group announced a new multi-year distribution deal with WoW. The women's wrestling promotion is owned by LA Laker owner Jeannie Buss. created by David McLean, who was behind the original Glow. New episodes of WoW will launch in weekend syndication beginning in the fall of 2022. Viacom CBS has already secured 160 markets for the show, representing 70% of the U.S. via licensing agreements with deals that include CBS-owned and operated stations and the Sinclair Broadcast Group. Previous WoW seasons are expected to begin airing on CW Seed and Pluto TV this December. AJ is going to provide color commentary on each broadcast, but will also serve as executive producer along with Bus. A lot to kind of dig into there, but where do you want to start, Paul?
First of all, I'm excited that there's a, this deal is already, jumps across the distribution that is had by multiple other major companies that are existing in the world of professional wrestling right now. Sure. So congratulations on everybody who's been obviously working very hard, a challenging job to get this put together. So I appreciate them doing that as well and bringing us more opportunities for women's wrestling visibility. I always am looking forward to that. The flip side of that is that, interestingly enough, I heard the buzz wasn't as much about AJ Lee. Everything, was sort of diminished. AJ Mendez was diminished a little bit because in the photos that were circulating, Tessa Blanchard was standing right behind her, and that's, that got the buzz more than AJ did, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. It's what a predicament for wrestling fans, right? You give them something that is literally like the negative and positive magnet. You try to push them together, they just want to fly apart, right? You're very happy for AJ, happy to see her back in wrestling. Very conflicted about Tessa. JJ Smith here, of course, the first to point out, does Viacom know about Tessa's past? Yes, of course, Tessa. Bullying allegations, accusations that she used the N-word towards La Rosa Negra, who has said that happened, right? We've never really gotten a full contrition, I feel like, from Tessa on that particular subject. So, I mean, yeah, mixed bag. Mixed bag for sure.
Well, I like to advocate for educational opportunities and growth for individuals. I can wholeheartedly say that I am not the same person with the same beliefs that I had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Sometimes I'm not even the same person with the same beliefs I had yesterday. But one of the things that I think is extremely important in allowing people opportunities for growth and to show that growth is there has to be some kind of ownership and acknowledgement of wrongdoing in the past, kind of like that contrition that you were talking about, and sort of like a transparency on the fact that there was a need for an effort to grow.
Yeah. I want to bring into the equation here. Wait, I'm pulling up the wrong document. I want to pull into here the Kurt Stallion stuff because, I feel like this is an appropriate time to bring that in. So, Kurt Stallion has issued a statement on previous comments he made about transgender people. Back in the summer of 2020, Stallion appeared on the 13th episode of the Double K Show podcast. The episode has since been deleted, but you can hear some of the audio clips in a Twitter thread, which is available online. Stallion's interview was done right after he had been accused of groping another man in the Speaking Out movement on social media. In the interview that was referenced, he calls trans women purple-haired dudes on Twitter who say that they're chicks. So he released the apology. I was going to try to play the audio. I mean, I guess I could try to play the video here if you'd like, but I feel like it's going to maybe destroy our feed, so we'll pass on that for now. But what he says here is, let me pull up the comments here. So he says he was, in regards to the groping allegations, he says, I just sack-packed him, boom, and when I sack-packed, oh wait, these are him addressing the allegations in 2020. I want what his apology is right now. Here he is. Okay. So he said, I am disgusted with the way that I've made people feel with the things I said. I never wanted to be that guy, nor do I ever want to be. So with that said, I sincerely apologize to anybody whose feelings were hurt by the things that I said or anything that I've done in the past, recorded or not. I would like to grow from this and move on. Hopefully we can do that together. So with that said, any potential or future potential bookings that I may receive for the rest of 2021, I'll be donating a percentage of that to the National Center for Trans Equality. Thank you all very much, and have a wonderful rest of your week. I don't know how people cannot stop saying in these situations, I apologize to people I offended. That's not the point. The point is taking ownership of what you said and acknowledging what you said was wrong and growing from that. And that's the kind of learning moments I feel like you're talking about. And that's the kind of thing I still haven't heard from Tessa Blanchard, which is why it's hard to take that next step. And I didn't hear from Tommy Dreamer. I didn't hear from Ric Flair. It's always, I'm sorry you're offended. It's not, I'm sorry that I did something that was offensive, if that makes sense.
I mean, I do think that for some people who are trying to deliver an apology, they want to try to personalize it. Like, if what I said hurt, if you were one of the people that what I said hurt, I want you to know that I have an understanding of what the harm I've created. I think I think that some people necessarily don't have the best communication skills or verbal skills. Sometimes that's how people get into problems to begin with. So at the same time, I would like, even whether they deliver the kind of apology that I want to hear or that I think is necessary, I am optimistic that the basis of what is being said here is that he is, understanding that he created harm for others, doesn't want to be that person, and maybe becomes more accountable as he moves forward.
It's just, for me, it's like I just would appreciate more people clearly taking ownership and not putting the blame on the person. Like, I'm sorry that you're upset, not about what I did. I don't know why that's so difficult for especially pro wrestlers to do. So look, actions speak louder than words. It's going to be a thing in that regards. I think Sammy Guevara is an excellent example of that. I think Sammy is actually one of the few people that actually fully take ownership of what he said and then have, repercussions for it. And I thought that that was I think that Sammy Guevara walked out on the other side showing he's a better man, acting like a better man. And I hope Kurt can do the same too. I'm just saying that, like, when I sense that somebody is apologizing because you're upset and not because what I did, which is, again, what I read in that, it doesn't give me the vote of confidence that there's like a real impetus in the person to change themselves. I'm just going to do this behind closed doors in a place where you're not going to be exposed to it because you're the problem in this situation, which is what I get from a lot of these apologies.
I don't know. Again, I don't disagree that some apologies are very blatantly that, but I do think that for a lot of individuals, simply saying something as blunt as, what, I effed up, I effed up. I said things in the moment that were not appropriate, that honestly don't even reflect the way that I think, or certainly not the way I behave. And it was reprehensible. And what I hope is that people are able to allow my actions as I move forward to speak louder than those words, which I regret.
All right. Well, we'll see. And yeah, as Gary Lyles is pointing out here, it's not just pro wrestlers, right?
It's a
cultural thing.
It's a human thing. Right. I think that, there are certain people, and I am one of them, that, like, I had a very hard time ever acknowledging that I'd done something wrong until I got to the point where I was just like, you know what? I could make a million excuses or just be like, I messed up, or I'm late, and not even give an excuse. Like, like, I'm late, I'm this, I'm that, I did this. And then allow the other person to guide the conversation through their response, and then we can work through it.
Yeah. Moving back to AEW news here, PW Insider sat down with Tony Khan, who addressed reports that the AEW EVPs have lost creative power. A couple excerpts here. Yeah, I saw those reports this week. I thought that was pretty disingenuous stuff from some of the internet wrestling writers, because nothing has changed in recent months. And really, the structure changed for me at the end of 2019, and it was because of me. I felt like I needed to take over, be more accountable as CEO and as the booker. I was the final say, but there were probably too many different people with input on segments, and this show wasn't as organized at the end of 2019 as I thought it could be. We talked about this. Like over a year and a half ago, we talked about this. I went on the record. I talked to you about it. And Dave Meltzer this week in The Observer, he wrote a pretty good account of it that nothing has really changed. I wonder what Dave's source was. I love this is a completely separate excerpt, but I love this line. I also get very amused when people refer to QT Marshall like the guy on the creative team. He's effectively my assistant, and he's great. He works his ass off. He'll show up in my room whenever I need him, and I sometimes will call him at 1 a.m. to come up, and I want to reorganize the show or make card changes, or I'm putting stuff together for Elevation or Dark or whatever I need. He's usually there for me, but I'm very hands-on with this stuff, and it's been that way for a long time, so I thought it was really disingenuous. Your thoughts on the latest pushback on the reports about the AEW EVPs and their power?
I'm just overwhelmed by I don't have any thoughts on it. I think that I am not against the idea of the EVPs losing their booking power, because I think that some of them have definitely booked themselves in a way that, you know, may not make other people a focal point. But I don't understand why he's like so up in arms about this. I think that isn't there a point in time when somebody says, "Oh, well, believe what you're going to believe." Like, was the show good?
Great. I think the story here is just kind of, I wonder if the risk here is the hardcore fans who came to AEW because of the Elite becoming upset for whatever reason, because that group of people is losing. I don't really know. I kind of want to know who's the most upset about this report backstage, because it's obvious somebody is. They've had to multiple times now try to push back on this story, and the obvious, like, again, it's fine. It's not a big issue unless you're somebody who is concerned that you are, like, you want this creative power, and you want people to think that you still have input and things like that. I don't know. It's very weird. A lot of pushback.
And somebody's like, and you better tell them that QT Marshall's nothing but a jobber who does shows up at your room at 1 o'clock in the morning doing whatever you want.
Dude, that QT, like, if you're QT, how do you hey, you know, I get upset when people say QT Marshall's part of creative. He's just my assistant. He comes to my room late at night. I bounce ideas off him. He shakes it. He nods his head. Like, QT.
He takes notes. I just imagine him showing up like with one of those like old school like steno pads, like, Mr. Khan, what are you doing? What do you need? Oh yeah, that's right. Hold on. Flips the page.
Yeah.
Shuffling in. This is going to show you how old I am. Shuffling in like Carol Burnett going into Tim Conway's office. He's like, Mrs. Wiggins.
Well, and here's the JJ Smith here saying, I think a lot of non-credible sites are reporting spreading this EVP thing is a new thing. And look, here's the thing, JJ. The reason this was a story is because you're right. Tony's right. In 2019, he said, I'm going to take on more creative control, and I'm going to better organize this product. At that point, then, certain people started to leave the creative room. It doesn't sound like Cody did. Like, it sounds like Cody stayed in that room longer than the Bucks and Omega did for whatever reason. And now it sounds like after that adjustment period that Tony's going to, we're kind of finding out what happened between 2019 and 2021. And that's the news right there. And that's what they're pushing back on. What they're pushing back on is that Cody was allowed to have his voice be louder in the room, and now has effectively been pushed out of that position. And Tony is now the only member of the original Beatles that is calling the shots on what makes the album. And that's why this became a story. It is disingenuous on Tony's part to act like this is the same story from when he spoke on the record in 2019. There was more details that Cassidy Haynes put into his report over bodyslam.net.
Well, you know, at the same time too, like, to say things like, I don't understand why this is making the news. I addressed this in 2019. Well, yeah, but that means what that says to me is that there's almost 2 years of fallout from this. And what is happening right now that's still a fallout from that announcement 2 years ago?
Yes, and that is the narrative that they're trying to take control of right now, Paul, right? And that's why you've seen So much pushback. I want to know. I mean, like, I think it's pretty clear who Dave's source is in this situation. But I want to know who's talking to Cassidy over at Body Slam, because, like, this is pretty sensitive inner circle stuff that he's leaking. And I know there's only so much you could get from barflies out of the Jacksonville area of AEW Dark people that have nothing to lose. But, like, some of this stuff is real inside. And, like, I don't know. Are there other EVPs that are leaking to one source and Tony's leaking to another source? And we're kind of seeing this battle play out in the open field? I'm not sure.
Is it leaking when, like, Tony Khan's like, Dave Meltzer, I swear to God, will mention you on every show if, you know.
I think it's just a good relationship for Dave, I guess. I mean, but it's definitely leaks. Or, like, and it's weird because, like, it's leaks, but, like, you got to source these things. Like, the reason I don't run as many, like, exclusives as others is, like, I like to talk to multiple people about a story, a lot of the times. And, like, if you're just taking a single source and writing, like, hey, this is what I got from a source, or this is what we're hearing from backstage, it only came from one person, that's when you're going to start to get a lot of pushback and confusion, because it only takes another source to take one other person off the record. And all of a sudden you're just going back and forth through your different mediums between.
Yeah, it's he said, she said, like it's one negates the other. So, and I agree with you. And, like, I come from that kind of journalistic background where I had to double check and get multiple sources. And that's not to say that that makes me better or worse than anybody else out there. It's just, it's one of the reasons why I don't write those kind of stories anymore, So I mean, I think that one of the things that, one of the reasons I also think that Tony taking more control, if that's what he wants to do, also is because I legitimately think that he probably spends a lot of time personally scouring the internet, seeing what people are responding to. I feel like he is that exact type of person. So, the fact that Cody has not been hitting on all cylinders in the role that Cody wants to be is probably, he's like, nope, that's not happening anymore. We're done with that. We're done with it. It's not hitting.
How do you feel about Cody saying he's never going to turn heel in AEW? That was something for the past 24.
I mean, that's not something that is new news. He said it a few weeks back. I don't think that, I don't think he's going to have a choice. I think that I legitimately think that the fans are telling him who he is.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a case for that to be made. All right, lastly here, before we get to Alicia, and then we'll quickly dive into the mailbag before we debut the Alicia video over on our YouTube channel. PW Insider saying WWE has hired Ken Doan, a.k.a. Kenny Dykstra. He's been working in Orlando for the past several weeks. He's been confirmed. He has confirmed the gig in his new Twitter bio. Of course, Doan originally worked for WWE from 2005 to 2009, returned briefly in 2016. Him and Mike Mondo worked recently for MLW in 2019, making several appearances as well for Beyond, all under the Spirit Squad moniker. Doan is a one-time WWE Tag Team Champion, and who can forget the Spirit Squad's memorable tag team title reign? They had the most devastating move in all of pro wrestling. We're just going to throw you as high as we can and let you fall to your death.
I mean, it's the only time that people have ever used the Freebird and the New Day rule all at one, because there was like 5 people who held that title. Okay, you guys, we're going to give you 5 of you 2 titles to divide among yourselves. Work it out.
All right, everybody. Hey, Paul, thank you very much for joining me at the Top Show to talk all the news today.
Of course.
Thank you very much to everybody who jumped in the chat room today. I love Dave in here saying that stance is perfect for Cody's heel character. Him saying, I'm not going to be a heel.
Agreed. I absolutely agree.
I don't know, man. Playing some 3-dimensional chess there. Thank you to Alicia too. Check out MLW Fightland tonight on Vice TV right after Dark Side of the Ring. Let's dive into the mailbag at Wink Daily. That's the account to follow. We're at 1,298 followers, nearly at 1,300, and then we're just going to take a rocket ship here over the next month to 1,666 followers. Go give us a follower so we get our super spooky follower number over on the at Wink Daily account. Right? Good.
Yeah, I hit 8,666 followers on Twitter yesterday. I was like, just in time for Halloween, but we passed it.
I'm at 6,658 followers myself. I'm 8 followers away from 6,666, which is
I remember hitting that number.
Yeah, I know. I'm riding your wave. I think I'll hit it like today. Feeling kind
maybe so.
today or tomorrow at Nick_Hausman. All right. Today's poll question stems from a podcast interview that Jeff Hardy did. This is from the Culture State podcast. And he teased that the masked Willow the Wisp character that he used to do over on Impact, I believe, on the Hardy compound and like back in the day when they did Omega Wrestling. Well, that character could be returning in the near future. He said, speaking of Willow, I was just talking to the guy that makes these masks who made it back then. He's such an awesome mask maker, and he's now making this new Willow mask. And we're talking about the possibility of Willow entering the scene once again before my career is over. So my question today, what do you think of Jeff Hardy possibly bringing Willow the Wisp to WWE TV? Do you love it? Are you okay with it? Don't like it? You hate it? 47.2 love it. 31.1 okay with it. 12.3 hate it. 9.4 don't like it. So roughly 8 and 10 fans pro Willow the Wisp coming to WWE TV. How do you feel about it, Paul?
One of the comments that I most agreed with on Twitter was the individual who's, I wish I could remember the Twitter handle, saying that before this should even be a conversation, Jeff Hardy needs to be rebuilt as a credible threat to anything. You know, Jeff Hardy, his star has fallen quite dramatically in the last couple of years. And it's something that we hate to see, but it's what invariably happens even to our favorites as their careers begin to wind down. And, you know, for example, when Jeff Hardy was in the triple threat at Extreme Rules, come on now.
Yeah. The person you're talking about, too, is Mishra JI1003. He said, first they have to establish Jeff as a solid main eventer. Then after that, he challenges Roman for the Universal title at TLC, loses after giving a tough fight. Then Roman and Drew will have a match at Royal Rumble. Well, Roman makes Drew pass out, retains the Universal title. And that's where Willow debuts with a new theme song. Roman stands shocked in the ring as they have a face-off. And finally, Willow versus Reigns happens at Fastlane, or maybe WrestleMania, it looks like. I don't know about that. But
I didn't say all that. I said I agree with the first line is first they have to make him a credible challenger again. Okay. Like, you know, he is somebody who quite unfortunate. I mean, I don't want to say it's fortunate or unfortunate because it's just part of the trajectory, right, of a career. He is definitely on, you know, his walk towards the sunset at this point of his wrestling career. And I don't feel that he is a top guy anymore in the company, which is, of course, the reason I flipped out when he beat Karrion Kross.
Yeah. I think that Jeff has a real, let's knock on wood. I'm optimistic he's going to be presented better on SmackDown than he was on Raw, just because SmackDown just seems to present people better, unless your name's Naomi.
Well, SmackDown did give us that fairly decent Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus feud.
Yeah, and look, you know, I said it before earlier this week. I don't remember to who or why, but you could put Jeff Hardy on a Fox Sunday football commercial, and people will remember Jeff Hardy.
Absolutely.
Like Fox's demo, like Jeff is a name that resonates to that demo that they're looking to hit more so than I'd say 90% of their roster, right?
Well, they have worked to establish him for 20 years. One would hope he would have that kind of recognition among their following after 20 years of programming.
One would hope. So
one would hope.
So
you better have him chase that 24/7 title.
So we're gonna wrap up. By the way, we got 60 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever, till the Alicia Toot interview premieres over on Wrestling YouTube. So go check that out right when we're done here. But I will put a button on the Willow thing. With Bray Wyatt gone and the Fiend gone, there is a lane for a kind of black and white, you know, dark and light kind of character, and I think Willow could do that. So anyway, that's my last thought. Paul, what do you want to put over here to wrap up the show today?
This Saturday, October 9th at Pacheco, California, Money, Power, Respect is facing Jacob and Journey Fatu inside a steel cage. I will exact my revenge for that stink face that we talked about. Yeah, flag us with that money. Show me the power and give me the respect. Okay. I'm going to be streaming that, by the way. I'm going to be streaming that show live on my Twitch channel, which is at Pollo Del Mar.
All right. And tomorrow, come on back. I'll be joined by Christy Olsen. We're also going to have my conversation with Nick Mondo, who just directed the amazing Nick Gage, John Moxley GCW Countdown special. It's available on GCW's YouTube channel. Highly recommend you check that one out before tomorrow. I didn't know that Nick is a stunt man on heels, so we just get to do a lot. Great conversation about deathmatch wrestling in Hollywood. If you like the Wrestling Inc. Daily, support WrestlingInc.com. We're on all the socials, and at night, check out the Wrestling Inc. podcast. It's just like this, only after all the big shows, including tomorrow night after SmackDown. And this Saturday night, as we're talking about GCW, it goes down Gage versus Moxley, GCW World Title, GCW Fightland. We're going to have, or Fight Club. We're going to have all the coverage of that show this Saturday night live on the site if you want to check it out there as well. I'm at Nick_Houseman over on Twitter. Go give me a follow so I can get to that satanic 66666 number. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't